Hey everybody, it's Don. In this episode of The Naturalist, I've retreated into my indoor studio, aka my garage, to talk about some bonsai projects that can be done in late winter prior to the growing season as a little bit of escape from what's going on outside right now. All right, so let's go. Well, welcome back to my indoor bonsai studio, aka my garage, where I kind of keep a lot of my plants over the winter. It's an unheated garage, and bonsai. Basically, bonsais are outdoor plants. You can grow them inside, can have them inside, but they're intended to be outdoor plants. A lot of people don't know that. They think small plants, these sit on the shelves of window shelves, and so forth. And you can do that with select bonsais, but that's not the idea with bonsai. They are thought to be deck, patio, backyard, front yard plants for display and ornamental purposes. So in any case, I do bring mine in just to kind of keep them away from deer and other things that are going on over the winter. It is an unheated garage, so they still get that cold period to go dormant and stay dormant until it's time to grow again. The one thing about having them inside is they will tend to want to bud out a little bit quicker, the deciduous plants, than they would normally outside, because it's a little warmer in here. It's not exactly outdoor temperatures. It just doesn't get as cold. So it's important to get them back outside at an appropriate time so they don't bud out too early. Or if they do bud out early, you should keep them inside for a little bit longer till you get past the frost stage outside, so they don't get frost damage, okay? Your deciduous plants in particular, all right? All right, so what I thought I would do today, I'm basically in between maple syrup episodes, all right? And so I thought we'd do something a little bit different and take a look at some of the things I've done recently, and I'll do something on camera for you here today. Okay, so the first thing is to show you a couple of things I've done in the last few weeks regarding repotting some plants that I had. I've been slowly starting to develop. Again, I've not been doing this for very long. I'm still very much a beginner. I'm learning along the way. And I tend to try to do things DIY style and on the cheap that anybody could mimic. And to that end, one thing about bonsai is, in the end, you want your tree, outside of the styling of it and shaping of it and pruning and so forth, you want it to be in a nice pot. And again, bonsai pots come in a variety of shapes and sizes, but they tend to be shallow, depending on the style, and either oval, rectangular, sometimes round, and they can have designs and all kinds of things. So I have a handful of formal bonsai pots, not anything too fancy just yet. But you can also find pots that are suitable for bonsai, or bowls or serving dishes that you can modify into acceptable bonsai pots for certain styles. So I want to tell you about that a little bit. I learned this basically online from Ben E. Seattle Bonsai. And let's see. So one example would be this pot right here with this. This is what you would call a cascade style bonsai. Okay, so it's a bonsai tree that obviously cascades out of the pot like a waterfall. And a cascade is the formal definition of a cascade is it extends below the base of the pot. So this one's on its way. This is a juniper. This is a Chinese juniper. And I've been styling it for just a few years now, about 3 years, I think, in total since I've gotten it. The tree itself is probably about 7, 8 years old, I would guess. And so I'm just getting it going, and I've been training it to in this cascade style. I haven't done a whole lot of pruning on it yet, but I will. But I mostly want to tell you about the pot. Okay, so with cascade styles, they're the one style of bonsai where you have more of a tall pot with a large soil volume. Okay, and that's because of the style. You want a pot that's large enough to to hold the tree upright and help you visualize and enhance that cascading appearance to the tree. Okay, so they typically are in this sort of shape. This is a square pot. It's about 2 times as tall as it is wide, which is a little bit on the tall side, but I thought it worked. But the point about it is that I acquired this pot from a Goodwill. And this pot was actually a vase, a flower vase. Now, obviously, when you grow plants in pots, there needs to be drainage. There has to be drainage holes. So a vase doesn't work as a vase if there are drainage holes in the bottom, right? The trick I learned that you can use to convert a vase or a bowl or a serving dish, something that has the appropriate shape and so forth to work as a bonsai pot, is that you need to usually drill drainage holes at the bottom. And again, these kinds of porcelain dishes, vases, and so forth are often require a hole cutter that can cut porcelain, okay, or terracotta or what have you. So I have now drilled a hole in the base of this pot, which previously didn't have a hole, using a drill bit that looks like this. This is a diamond tip hole cutter, okay, that's capable of cutting tile or cutting through porcelain or cutting through terracotta and pottery and so forth. And so basically you just use a regular drill, use some water to help lubricate the process, but you can use this little tool to convert a vase, a bowl, a serving dish into a bonsai pot, okay? And instead of a pot like this that might cost you, if you bought this from a bonsai supplier and it was a formal, nice bonsai pot, it might be $30, $40, $50. I bought this for $2, okay, and converted it. And I think it works quite well. I also painted it, and I painted this one just plain white. I would probably go back next time and paint it more of a tannish, bronzish sort of colors, which often is used in these cascade style bonsais to contrast with the very green foliage of an evergreen like this juniper. Okay, so in any case, this was a cascade I've been working on. I have a little bit of wire on it. I will, to train it downward, I will in the future add a little bit more movement to that and start to thin this stem out and create what are called individual pads along the way, okay, to break up the foliage into distinct pads of foliage with some bare stems showing in between, which is a common way you produce bonsais that are, make them more visually appealing. Although it looks pretty nice the way it looks right now, I think, as well. But so that's one project. And I just repotted that recently, created that pot and repotted it recently. Okay, I'll set that aside. Now, just to show you, here are a couple of bowls, basically, okay, that were quite shallow. Nice, solid porcelain bowls. I also acquired at Goodwill. And here I'm showing how you drill those holes. And there's the cost, $1.99. All right, so that's the result of the tile cutter, hole cutter. And this is going to probably be used to pot, perhaps, the little pine that I did for you on camera a couple of months ago. Okay, so I got a couple of these and I converted them into pots I'll use for bonsai. You notice I have 2 holes there. That's because with bonsai you need 2 or 4 holes because you often have to wire your trees into place to hold them there, okay, because they have very reduced root systems. You have a very reduced minimal soil volume. So you don't have a lot of, the tree can be very top heavy. You need to hold it in place until it basically fills the container with roots and holds itself in place. So you usually need at least 2, if not 4 holes to be able to wire the tree in place. Okay, so I'll do that potting job in another video. All right, let me show you this little tree that I'm also working on. Okay, this is an olive tree, cultivated olive tree. And this tree is, let's see, this tree is about probably 6 or 7 years old also. And I've been kind of slowly growing it. Well, not slowly growing it, I'm growing it as fast as I can, but slowly shaping it and designing it. I've recently wired it to put some more movement into the trunk there. Okay, and I'll let this grow out this spring and summer, and then continue to develop pads on this cultivated olive tree in various locations. Okay, so that's one that I repotted here just recently, and I think it looks pretty cool. It's a good start. What I thought I would do for you today specifically is do a repotting on camera of this tree. Okay, this is a tree that this tree, believe it or not, is probably about 20 years old. I've been growing it this is just a regular like flower pot. This is not an appropriate bonsai pot. This is just the kind of pot you can have them in to grow them for a period of time, develop their roots, but it's not an actual bonsai pot. It's also just plastic and not very appealing. So it's come time to put it into a nicer bonsai pot. Okay, now this is a deciduous tree. This is an Asian ash species. It's called Fraxinus bungiana, or Bunge's ash. And it's, I don't think, a very common tree used in bonsai at all. It makes compound leaves. They're very fine. It grows prolifically, sprouts prolifically. I have to prune it several times throughout the season. But this is, the bare bones of what it looks like right now over winter time. Okay, so I've bent and shaped branches into place. I now have some decisions to make today as well. One, the way it's situated. Well, two things, sorry. To decide which side of this tree I'm going to consider to be the front. Okay, will it be this side facing the camera or this side? Okay, either side has its appeal, and I really haven't decided entirely, but if I kind of situate it in the pot, it may not matter. It looks pretty good in both directions. But here's some of the consequences. So first of all, this style with the kind of lean and movement excuse me, that you see, yet it's still upright. This would we'd call a informal upright, okay, as opposed to a formal upright, which would have more of a straight trunk in the center with the branches coming out. Okay, so this is an informal upright, has some movement. I was training this to be a double trunk tree. Okay, it had a partner. This branch had a partner here at one point, but I just decided I didn't like it, and I was going to train it into this informal upright. But that left a pretty big scar here, and that is growing. It's healing. Okay, around it. I didn't use any sort of cut paste or anything on it, which you can do, but it is healing around it, but it's still not a very attractive feature if we were to use that as the front of the tree. If you use this as the front, okay, facing the camera, you can see that scar is hidden. And so that might be the way this tree will get displayed primarily. Okay, now, again, this is a deciduous tree. It has a lot of foliage. It has compound leaves, so it has a lot of foliage in the summer. This little dead branch here is what you call a jin. It's just a section of dead wood to provide some sort of visual appeal. You would often bleach this so it stands out a little bit more. I did not do that. I still would have the opportunity to do that, is to kind of clean up this dead branch here and bleach it, make it appear paler. It just looks more visually interesting. So I might still do that, but I'll keep it for now. Gins are not frequently used on deciduous trees, but sometimes they are. They can be. Again, there are rules in bonsai, but again, there are no rules as well. So you know, whatever appeals to you works. Okay, the other thing about this tree is I originally was considering this to be the front, but the tree is also leaning backward, okay? Normally in bonsai, your tree should have a slight forward lean. And I think I described in my video of bonsai last time, your lower branches should initially come kind of toward the viewer. And again, like it's giving you a hug. And so right now this tree has a backward lean. So if we use this as the front, we'd have to lean it a little bit more toward the front like that. However, if you look at this side, it has that natural forward lean to it already, as you can see. This one has a little bit more of the lean toward the front. And we'll see. We'll see how it looks once we start to situate it in the pot. Okay. Okay, now this pot, I repotted it a couple times in either this same pot or a pot about this size. So the next thing we're going to do is basically take it out of this pot, clean off the old soil, prune the roots, give them a good pruning to the size necessary to fit into the pot that I've chosen. And so the pot I'm going to stick this tree in is this one. Okay, it's a nice dark glazed emerald blue emerald green pot. I just acquired these at a local nursery store in my area. And these are not the most high-end pots, but they work. Okay, they're attractive. And if you look at the bottom, there are 2 large holes, but there are smaller holes here that'll be very useful for the wiring part. Okay, the 2 large drain holes, 4 smaller holes for the wiring. Okay. All right, so the next step is simply to get this tree out of this pot, see what these roots look like, and prune it up. Oh, before I do that though, I want to talk about this section of the roots. If you recall, this part of the root system that's exposed in bonsai is called nabari. And so this tree has some pretty interesting nabari. It's kind of on a flat plane. I don't like it that much because it's just sort of flared out on 2 sides rather than on all sides. But there's still some interesting, root formations there that is something you want to feature and display in bonsai. This side might have a little bit more appeal in that regard, but this side isn't bad either. Okay, so we're going to emphasize that when we repot it. In bonsai, you also tend to pot the trees fairly high in the pot so that basically the root soil interface is essentially at the surface of the pot so that you really can display that nabari and all the features of the stem. It's not sunken down into the pot. Okay, that's part of the style rules of bonsai. All right, so let's just get this thing out of here. I think, okay, it popped right out. There we go. I'll get rid of this for now. Okay, first of all, this has lots of good roots. Okay, lots of good fibrous roots. And too many, actually, too much. So the first thing I'm going to do is just to start to work some of this soil out of here and get down to eventually a root mass that will fit into this pot well, and go from there. Okay, and again, I don't have that much in the way of fancy bonsai tools, but I have a couple. This little rake type tool is convenient and useful for scraping away soil from roots and seeing what we have in that regard. So I'm going to just start doing that. Eventually, as I go here, I need a better workbench, and what's handy to have with bonsai as well is a little rotating table. So as you work on just like a pottery wheel, as you work on the tree, you can constantly spin it around and examine and re-examine your movements, your decisions. And so that's very useful to have. Obviously, you can just spin it around like I'm doing, but I will eventually move up to the rotating little table as well. It's also nice now, the way I'm situated here is this bench is lower than I would like it as well. It's often nice to view bonsais from straight, more or less your head straight onto the stem and foliage right in front of your face. So as you're working on it, it's nicer to have it, elevated higher than where I have it. So that's another thing with time, I'll add is a taller workbench as I expand my bonsai empire. So, this is just a little hobby for me, but it is really interesting. I think I talked about this last time. I enjoy watching bonsai videos. There's some really amazing people that produce bonsai videos around the world. And some are more pragmatic and maybe simple, and they're all there to help. First of all, I think everybody is there to show off their talents along with trying to help you develop skills. But some of them are very artistic, okay, with music and the sound and the design features and drawing and animation, time-lapse photography, many features that just make it really an experience, actually. So I don't want to go through naming too many of these, but all you need to do is search for bonsai pruning basics and what have you, and you'll find dozens of these kinds of videos. Maybe I'll be the next one to create a channel devoted entirely to bonsai, but for now, it's just a hobby. Okay, so this tree has tons of fibrous roots. This is good. This is what you want. It's harder to deal with larger taproot and lateral roots in terms of getting it to the form to fit into the bonsai pot. So these will be easy to trim. It is very root bound though. This is a good decision on my part to do this, because this tree had filled that pot with roots, and the soil is quite ingrained there. I also did not use a bonsai soil when I did this. This was just a compost, actually, from my own backyard. Compost I've produced from, leaves and scraps and all kinds of things. Some garden soil. But, and so it certainly has grown well. That's good. Actually, when you first start to grow trees for bonsai, if you want them to grow fast and thicken the trunk, which again is a key, this, developing as thick of a trunk as you can, as fast as you can, you don't want to immediately stick them in a small pot necessarily, because that will stunt their growth. They will not grow a large, thick trunk very quickly in a very small pot with a small soil volume. So actually growing them in a regular flower pot with more soil, developing roots like this, will really let your tree take off. Now, this is some damage, right? This is damage to the roots. And so it will not grow as fast this year probably as it would have otherwise. But I'm sure it's going to do fine. Okay, I'm going to start to chop at some of these roots too, just with clippers for now. Because I know for sure I'm not going to need these bottom roots. But this is really great. There's not a one big taproot to contend with yet, at least that I've hit. Making a mess with the soil, but that's all right. Okay, I'm getting somewhere. Now, there is no need to remove all of the soil. You end up maybe damaging more roots than necessary. So I will not worry about trying to get every, particle of soil out of this root ball here. But I'm going to try to get a lot of it out because I'm going to put it into a different soil. Bonsai soils, there's a variety of recipes. It's It's probably not even as important as it's made out to be in some cases what it is. But what you really want is a lot of aeration, a lot of drainage, coarseness to promote a lot of root formation and prolific, basically growth. You need some nutrients, of course, but they're usually coarse soils. They have different forms of clay often. There's a Japanese clay called akadama that is used a lot in bonsai. There are, lava rock, vermiculite, perlite, compost, all kinds of things. Okay, so look at the length of some of these things. So they were kind of twirled around in that round pot where they were confined for a while. But that was great, but it's more than we need right now, more than we can even handle right now. Okay, so we're getting somewhere. Again, we're eventually going to try to fit it in this pot, right? So I've got a ways to go, right? Okay, there's some larger roots now in the center of this, which of course is normal. I'm going to see some of the larger roots I chopped there. And this is going to be more of a flat, couple inch thick root mat I'm going to retain. Make sure these are flared out. Just trying to scrape out a little bit more of that soil. This was a very fine compost that this was in. So this was not at all a typical bonsai soil. I'll show you in a second what I'm going to put this in. It's also not a fancy bonsai soil, just a mixture that I've put together that works. I think I have to take these thicker roots back a little bit more because they're going to hit the bottom of my bonsai pot. Sorry if I grimace while I cut these things. Okay, we're getting somewhere. And this looks like, torture. And, this will set the tree back a little bit, but they really can compensate for this very well. That's the nature of bonsai. There have been bonsais grown in pots for hundreds of years. There's hundreds of years old bonsais out there. And they've been repeatedly repotted, cut back, pruned on the top and the bottom, and they're still alive. Okay, so I don't think we're going to hurt this tree very much. Okay, but boy, there's a lot of potential for the Nabari there. You can see there's all kinds of interesting root formations there. I'm dirtying up this stem quite a bit, so I'll have to wash this thing down when I'm done. Let's see where we're getting. Okay, that's not terribly far off where we need to be. This is a little higher than I'd prefer, however, so I'm going to lower it just a little bit more and then start to deal with the wiring. This almost doesn't even need it. It's very stable, but some of the wiring and the soil. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to dress the top of this with some moss in the end. So I want to make sure there's a little bit of space, extra space on top to be able to do that. And that's just a little design feature to make it look interesting. Yeah, it's incredible. This root mass, this fibrous root mass, this is just excellent. This is exactly what you want. Fine roots is exactly what you want in bonsai. Okay, that's looking pretty good if you ask me. Okay, so I think I might go just a little wee bit more, trim a few edges here, and then we'll put it in the pot for the year. Now, you should do this probably every couple of years, 2-3 years. Sometimes you can let them go for a long time, but you can't let them go forever, right? Because they become very root bound and then their health will start to suffer. Okay, now with an informal upright, the other thing about is where it's situated in the pot. Okay, since it has a natural bend to its main stem, you kind of don't want it to be centered in the pot so that the bend takes the tree the whole way off the side of the pot. You would tend to want to have it start a little bit closer to one side and then bend across the pot, okay, like something like that. So I think that's working pretty well. Let me just take a look at that. Yeah, I like that. Okay, I'm going to go just a little bit lower with it, and then we're almost ready. Okay, I think I've got the roots where I want them. All right, now the soil mix that I've created here is simply a potting soil mix that's made up of a commercial potting soil mix that has peat moss, vermiculite, and perlite already in it, but it's fairly fine. Okay, and what I've done to that to modify it is add some coarse vermiculite and some perlite. So I've made it has a more coarse grain to it now. So the one thing I'm going to bypass here that you can do is put a little screen over these large drainage holes so you don't lose your soil. I'm going to bypass that because these large vermiculite granules should block those holes up, so I'm not worried about that. But I am going to cut some wire real quick so we can wire this thing in place. And just to hold it. Okay, so this is my annealed copper wire. Again, you can buy this pretty cheaply at any big box store. It's pretty easy to work, but it gets tougher to work as you work it. That's the characteristic of annealed copper. All right, so here's a couple of sections I'm going to cut 2 sections of it. I think this is long enough, I hope. Now I'm going to run it up the holes, both sides, okay, and lay it out like that in preparation for situating the tree. And I'll do that on the other side as well. You want that wire to be flat across the bottom and then ready to receive the tree. Okay, like that, across the top. Okay, I have some little pliers that I'll use to twist those wires to hold the roots in place. I'm going to start by just putting a little bit of my soil I just described to you in the bottom of the pot. Okay. It's not bad. Okay, yeah, I think that's probably enough. Okay, now these wires, you want to hold the roots in place. You don't want to bind your main stem, but you also want them to be kind of hidden. Okay, so I'm going to just ran them through a lower portion of this side over here. Twist that in place for the moment. Just make sure I like the situation. Yeah, I do. Okay, I'm going to do the same over here. Want it below where anybody would see it. As long as it's grabbing onto some of the roots below, that's fine. It's enough. You don't need to protect the tree from a tornado. You just basically need to have it held in place while it's developing, redeveloping those roots. And eventually it will fill out this pot. And I like that, actually. I like that situation right there. Okay, so I'm going to just twist those wires a little bit to hold it in place with my little pliers. Again, you could pull up on the wires and twist. Again, you don't have to. Yeah, that's held in very well. It doesn't really take much. Yeah, that's held very well. Okay, so there's our tree with its slight forward lean in that direction, which I like. Slight backwards. It's still not bad from that angle as well. So either way, it looks good. And then what I'll do is just, I'm going to trim these wires a little bit. And then bend them down out of the way, out of view, so they get covered by soil. Okay, those should be hidden now. And the next thing we're going to do now is fill the rest of the pot with our soil and maybe trim away some of the excess roots near the surface. I'll probably come back and detail that later, but in the interest of time, I'll just move on to the soil part. Okay, and you just want to fill all around, all sides. Okay, now the traditional way to pack this in, of course, you want to pack this soil in and get it into all of the air spaces, is to use a chopstick. Okay, now I don't have a chopstick with me right at the moment, so I'm just going to use this tiny little trowel / shovel spade sort of thing. I have one little bonsai kit with some tools that are good for small bonsai projects. I'm just going to tamp this, make sure all these spaces are filled in with this potting mixture. And again, at the very end, we'll water this in place, but we're not ready yet. I should say that this is about, what is this? February 24th, I think. I'm not even sure. I think we're in February 24th, 2024. And by the way, if you like what you see, like and subscribe to the channel and hit that little bell button and you'll be notified of updates. Okay, so still have lots of episodes along the way. I have 1 to 2 more episodes to complete the maple syrup projects. And I'll have more of these kind of episodes to fill in between my nature walks and things like that. So I hope you do enjoy this little break from that, because it's something I enjoy to do. Okay, so I think that's pretty good. I'll tamp that in a little bit more. It's held in there well. Okay. Now, we can take a look a little bit at the Nabari. I have some surface roots here that are showing too much fiber. I'm going to remove those. Okay. In fact, I'm going to remove this whole one right there. It's not bad, though. I'll come back to refine this. I'll probably also film an episode of when I come back to prune this summer after it grows out, presuming that it does grow out. I'll see why it shouldn't. But again, you want to go back and clean up your Nobari. Excuse me, take away any little fibrous dead ends and emphasize the cool features that you have in it. There are certain bonsai styles where you plant the tree over a rock so that your roots spread out over a rock, which I think is cool. But this one's pretty nice, I think. Okay, so here's what we have. I will further refine this in the future, but let's see what it looks like if I put some moss on top of it. I just have some moss I got from my yard. Okay, the thing about moss is it can affect the tree a little bit. It does have, it does change the chemistry of the soil a little bit. And it itself has some needs. Moss needs to stay moist to look good. And this moss that I'm going to put in here is from a kind of a shady spot in my yard. So it may not like being out on the deck where I plan to put this tree when it's all done, where I've kept it. So if it fails, I'll just remove it. I'll just, but let's take a look at it. So here's moss. Okay. And again, moss is a plant too. It's what we call lower plant. So this has a thin layer of soil on it. So I'll just sort of clean it up a little bit. Thin layer of regular soil. Again, if this doesn't look good, I'll just remove it right away. But basically just take pieces. To fit around your tree. It's like puzzle pieces. Okay, not bad, not bad. A little piece to go right there. All right. here's our end product then. Okay, there'll be a little tray for this to sit on. There is a bonsai Bunge's ash repotting job here done in February of 2024. This will go outside in about maybe 6 weeks after the worst frosts are over, and I'll just let it leaf out and grow out from there. And then I'll certainly film the pruning of this tree later. So here's the other side. You want bonsais to look good from both sides. And there we go. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. And again, I'm happy for all the viewers that pay attention to this show. I've enjoyed making it, and I hope people watch it. Okay? Take care. See you next time.